let's just get right into it. As I'm recording today, it is Wednesday, and we've had a ton of developments out of the Alpine camp, most notably Alpine confirming that Franco Colapinto is going to replace Jack Doohan for the next 5 rounds as the team opts to rotate the seat. So Jack Doohan moved back into the reserve role. Franco Colapinto graduating from that reserve role into the full-time seat. Well, part-time seat is what it kind of feels like this season. And why sideline Jack Doohan, I think, is the first question. There's a number of ways we can look at this, but let's just start here. Why would you want to sideline Jack Doohan? You started the season with him. You gave him an extra race last year to start to prove himself, get comfortable with the team, start understanding the procedures. And Jack Doohan has tried his best to stay afloat at Alpine with a massive target on his back. And he was given the opportunity to prove himself, but he has thus far failed within those goals. He just has not quite met the moment. And I, like many fans of the sport, look, I think I was rooting for Jack Doohan at a certain level. If you go back and watch the preseason podcast, I talked about what was at stake for pretty much every single driver walking up and down the grid. Jack Doohan's goals and Jack Doohan's ambitions and Jack Doohan's expectations and the targets were very clearly outlined. And so far, it just hasn't quite gone his way. It's been somewhat of a disappointing season. And look, I understand the pressure that was put on Jack Doohan immediately after Franco Colapinto came over from Williams, became the Alpine reserve driver after having some success at Williams last year in the replacement of Logan Sargent. Obviously, with the addition of Carlos Sainz to pair with Alex Albon, you have an odd man out situation, the most vulnerable seat on the grid being this Alpine seat. Franco Colapinto saw it as an opportunity. Flavio Briatore, sees this as an opportunity for Alpine, and it put a lot of pressure on the young Australian driver. But look, even through all the pressure that is Formula One, the pressure cooker that is this sport, Jack Doohan just didn't really deliver up to this point. A DNF in Australia, and we can argue that that's a wash. It was a super tumultuous race where about a third of the grid crashed. We can call that one a wash. But then there was contact with Gabriel Bortoleto in the Chinese sprint. He ended up finishing in last place in that. A huge crash that cost the team money and resources and time and effort to re-put the car back together because of not closing the DRS flap. A poor form in Saudi Arabia to finish nearly last, and then DNFing in Miami on lap 1. There was some good there as well. He had some strong performance in Bahrain, and the raw pace was pretty solid for Jack Doohan as far as being compared to his teammate in Pierre Gasly. But over the course of the season, throughout these first 6 rounds, you could argue that he's largely disappointed. I think I might have given him a C grade in our rookie temp check, our rookie grades up to that point in round 5, but the argument really could be made that it's maybe a D+ performance so far at best. And I can't really blame Alpine for making this move. His raw pace at times, I understand. You know, the decision to put Colapinto in, though, and scoring points across from Alex Albon last year, it's enticing. It's very sexy. It's going to draw you in. And Franco Colapinto is not without fault either. He had crashes in Las Vegas last year and a very tumultuous session in Brazil as well. So it's not like this is going to be a 100% slam dunk pick that's going to have no faults in the slightest in putting Franco Colapinto in this seat. But in comparison to Jack Doohan, you have a point-scoring driver from last year versus a guy who, through 6 rounds this year, has crashed the car repeatedly and can't seem to find his way into the points when the car even is kind of hooked up, coming kind of close, but really not being in that competitive scope so far, especially compared to the talent we're seeing from some of the other rookies within this class. So as far as Colapinto is concerned, I think the expectations after maybe a race or two of settling in, we'll probably see him competing pretty closely with Pierre Gasly. A midseason driver switch is always very challenging. Heck, ask Yuki Tsunoda and ask Liam Lawson. That exchange is still being graded as we speak. But we've seen from Colapinto that he has some damn good pace. But I think it would be a bit of a surprise if he was out qualifying Pierre Gasly immediately. As far as the other part of this story, some of the other things that have come out of this story, Oliver Oakes has also stepped down, has stepped away from the Alpine racing team. A statement put out This is on their social media platform, the Alpine F1 Team X or Twitter, whatever you want to call it, announcing that Oliver Oakes resigned from his role as the team principal. The team accepted his resignation with immediate effect. Flavio Briatore is going to become the executive advisor as well as the team principal of Alpine. They thanked Oliver for his efforts. He granted this, he's nabbed the 6th place last year, and they just decided not to really make any extra comments at that point. And I think it's incredibly possible, and it's probably very likely that these two decisions were 100% connected. Flavio Briatore winning out in the swap and assuming the duties of the team principal role with Oakes now out of the picture. Oakes now the 4th team principal in 4 years for this team. And Oliver Oakes had a lot of success, but at the same time, it just didn't quite come together for the team and in the way that maybe they were expecting it to. 6th place last year, I think more or less. 6th place last year was kind of the best you could possibly hope for. Oliver Oakes coming in mid-season, taking over from Bruno Firmin and delivering was incredibly inspiring. If you're an Alpine racing fan, you didn't really want to see Oliver Oakes go. I mean, obviously there's a lot of great history with Flavio Briatore, which we're going to talk about here in a few moments, but losing Oliver Oakes within all of this, it's an unfortunate circumstance considering the feeling of the Alpine team overall. They had been positive. They've been moving in a good direction since he assumed duties last year for this team. Alpine finished once again in 6th place in the Constructors' Championship, grabbing an insane double podium with Esteban Ocon and Pierre Gasly in Brazil. And they've shown some signs of life this year. A really strong performance from Pierre Gasly, nearly grabbing a P6 out of Max Verstappen, pulling it away from him in Bahrain. But it's really unfortunate to see this happening once again. There are going to be a lot of questions raised about this Alpine racing team, as there should be. Having 4 team principals over the course of 4 years is not a sign of health within this organization. It's not something that's promising. And if you're a part of this organization, seeing all the things that have come and gone, seeing everything that's changed hands in the time that you have been at Alpine, there's been a lot of movement. There's been a lot of drastic changes, including changes from infrastructure, and asking the question, really, what does this say about Alpine? The once banned F1 team principal Briatore coming back into the fold as that advisor, now taking over command as the team principal. Alpine have been back and forth messes within this current regulation set. Renault even pulling themselves out of the engine supplier mix. Alpine becoming a Mercedes customer starting next year. Briatore following a judge overturning his ban after the Crashgate scandal. Very controversial incident within Formula One history. Please, if you're not really familiar with this situation, go look into it. But Briatore, controversial, but at the same time, a proven winner as well. Him taking over this role, I think, continues that trend of controversial, but at the same time, I kind of get it. Who else would make sense for this role other than Briatore? And he's a very accomplished member of the sport. Overall, he's had multiple drivers and constructors titles in the past. He's accomplished, and now he's got even more power over this Alpine Formula One team with Oakes' departure. In a nutshell, the driver movement, the administrative movement, the team principal movement, the engine movement, everything happening within Alpine right now, it's really doing nothing but, proposing questions and asking questions and not really providing a lot of answers. At the end of the day, performance is going to speak for itself, maybe, but there seems to just be things that are maybe rotten at the core here when it comes to Alpine. Normally, you wouldn't really want to see a mid-season driver switch. You certainly wouldn't want to see this much administrative turnover, and the organization overall pulling completely out of the sport, a very historic and storied organization pulling out of the sport from an engine supplier standpoint. I know they had struggled within these regulations to really, get it together, but at the same time, you got to have a lot of questions. I'm not exactly sure how to answer all these at this juncture, but, I do feel bad for Jack Doohan. But if Franco Colapinto isn't delivering either, maybe that's going to propose a lot more questions as well. Maybe it's going to answer some. So we're going to have a lot of stuff to look forward to as, Alpine is concerned. It's Franco Colapinto's turn, but at the same time, man, Alpine right now, overall temperature check, it just feels messy and kind of all over the place.